The US government has pledged more than $200 million in aid to the UN agency that supports Palestinian refugees. The Trump administration cut funding in 2018. But even with the renewed support, pressure is mounting on Washington to do more to resolve the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. Mobin Nasir reports.
Schools for Palestinian refugees, like this one in Gaza, are getting a new lease on life. Their funding had dried up after the US government halted aid disbursements to the UN Refugee and Works Agency in 2018. It forced the closure of some schools and severely limited operations in others. Now, Washington has promised to resume its support.
We're pleased to announce that working with Congress, we plan to restart the U.S. economic development, security, and humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian people. Members of Congress, just as we do, recognize that the aid we announced today is consistent with our interests, it is consistent with our values, it is consistent with the interests of those in the region, to include Palestinians, not only in the West Bank and Gaza, but also in the broader region as well as the interest of our Israeli partners.
The US will provide $235 million in aid each year to Palestinians. This includes $75 million in economic and development assistance for Gaza and the occupied West Bank. $10 million will go towards various programs that aim to promote peace among Palestinians and Israelis. And $150 million will be allocated to the UN Relief and Works Agency, which supports Palestinian refugees. The announcement marks a reversal in US policy, but President Joe Biden is not undoing all the steps taken by his predecessor. The US Embassy was moved from Tel Aviv to West Jerusalem under Donald Trump. The former president also brokered deals between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and other Gulf nations to normalize diplomatic relations. The Biden administration says it will not roll back any of these measures. It also has not reinstated direct economic support to the Palestinian Authority. While many rights activists have welcomed the resumption of humanitarian assistance, some say Washington needs to do more to promote lasting peace in the region.
He should say that the U.S. is not going to provide military aid or sell arms to highly abusive governments, and then mean it by cutting off arms sales to the likes of Egypt or Saudi Arabia or Israel. Biden should re-engage with the UN Human Rights Council, even though it criticizes Israel. He should end Trump's outrageous sanctions on the International Criminal Court prosecutor, even if she decides to investigate U.S. torture in Afghanistan or Israeli war crimes in Palestine.
Meanwhile, the UN has appealed to the international community to step up efforts to help Palestinians tackle the coronavirus pandemic, which has caused a healthcare crisis and devastated the already fragile economy. Mobin Nasir, TRT World.
Well, for more on this, Tamara Alrifai from the UN Relief and Works Agency joins us live now from Amman. Welcome to the program, Tamara. Now, in 2018, as we heard there, the Trump administration ultimately withdrew some $300 million from your agency, from UNRWA. What's your reaction now that the Biden administration has effectively reversed course and restored much of that funding?
We really welcome this return. We welcome the reinstatement of aid to Palestinians. We welcome the re-engagement with the United States. We are really heartened by the return of the U.S. as a very strong partner to UNRWA and a very strong partner on the Middle East, on a conflict that's one of the most complex and oldest conflicts, but mostly it's the Palestinian refugees who feel truly relieved at a few more months, at least, of running basic services. I just heard your report about schools getting a new lease on life. It's a new lease until we get some more funding. But this resumption of engagement with the U.S. is extremely important to UNRWA. It's extremely important from a humanitarian perspective. It's extremely important from a financial perspective for UNRWA, but also from a political perspective on the region.
Until 2018, the United States was UNRWA's largest donor. How difficult has it been to manage operations ever since the Trump administration cut hundreds of millions of dollars in funding, particularly during this pandemic?
It was extremely difficult to manage when your major donor, the donor that used to pay 1/3 of your entire core budget, decides to pull the plug. However, in the early stages of that decision, we saw an enormous and spontaneous level of support from many other donors, some from the Arab region and many from the entire world, from Europe, from Asia, from many institutions. Last year, 2020, was particularly difficult as many of our own consistent donors struggled with their own economies, struggled with the financial and socio-economic impact of COVID. So it was extremely difficult for us to pursue our basic operations such as healthcare, education, and social services across 5 different fields, while also trying to mitigate the effect of COVID. So the announcement of the resumption of aid now brings back a lot of hope for the continuation of our services, but also for the efforts that UNRWA is doing alongside national authorities everywhere we work to contribute to the vaccination campaigns against COVID-19.
Now, this announcement coincides with Jordan and Sweden's plans to host an international conference later this year, either in June or July, to basically re-engage the international community around UNRWA. As you say, it has been difficult to really maintain that consistent support for your agency. What do you hope will come out of this conference when it does happen?
UNRWA will come to the conference with a vision. It'll come with a vision for a modernized UNRWA with lessons learned from this COVID-19 period, but also lessons learned from having to deal and to continue operations with so much less money. We're coming to the conference with like a blueprint that informs on our plans for the coming few years to maintain quality basic services to millions of Palestinian refugees in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, Gaza, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. And in return, we hope that participants, member states, UN member states, our traditional donors, but new one, will come with a multi-year commitment to enable us to roll out our modernization plans.
And explain to us exactly how significant the restoration of this funding from the Biden administration, what impact will that have on your operations? Do you have any specific projects that really need addressing right now?
Our most urgent needs right now are to first, financially stabilize UNRWA so that we can really continue all our services until the end of the year. We are an agency that chronically suffers from lack of funding and from cash flow crises. The fact that we now know that we have $150 million allows us some breathing space, but it doesn't stop us from reaching out to more partners to ask them to continue supporting UNRWA. There's a special call we're making to the region I am in, to the Arab region, to continue supporting Palestinian refugees through UNRWA so that we can go ahead and continue delivering on our mandate. We deliver our mandate based on a resolution from the UN General Assembly to which most of the countries of the world vote. So we carry the request of the international community through the UN General Assembly to continue delivering basic services, protect, assist Palestinian refugees until there is a lasting political solution that ends their plight.
Okay, Tamara Alrifai from the UN Relief and Works Agency, thank you so much again for joining us on Money Talks.